What's up, fam? It's Brian Castrillo, and it's time for another late night movie review. But this is kind of a little special one because recently we had lost one of my favorite actors, Ray Liotta, and he had died while he was making a movie called Dangerous Waters. I hope he got to finish all of his scenes because I'll be looking forward to that movie when it comes out. But I posted out to my Twitter, which is at Brian Castrillo 2, if you ever want to follow me on Twitter. That I want to do a tribute to him, and I wanted to do a movie review of one of his movies, and I put it out to my Twitter fam and said, just put in the comments, what movie review would you like me to do? And, I was thinking it was going to be The Godfather, so many good movies of his, but it ended up being Field of Dreams. Now, this is a movie I've seen before, and so I would be watching this again, but I remember, this being a great movie, but I didn't remember how great it was because it's been such a long time that I've seen it. And just an amazing movie. Probably one of the greatest movies of all time. If not, and definitely probably the best sports movie of all time. But you guys can tell me in the comments which one you think is the best sports movie. This is written by Phil Alden Robinson. And Now, Ray Liotta plays Shoeless Joe Jackson. He doesn't have the biggest role. Of course, that goes to Kevin Costner. And this just a phenomenal movie. I feel like I saw this for the first time again. And when I first saw it, it was, I was obviously a lot younger, but I believe I saw this in the movie theater. And I'm a huge baseball fan. And so the fact that my peeps, chose this movie to do for him, I'm grateful for that because I love this movie. But so the premise of this now, Kevin Costner, he is Ray Kinsella, and you're hearing about how his father was a big Shoeless Joe Jackson. Now, of course, Shoeless Joe Jackson was part of the 1918 Chicago White Sox team that was forever banned from baseball because they were paid, as the story goes, they were paid to throw the World Series. But now, if you look at the stats for what Joe Jackson did during that game, it does not appear that he was throwing the game. Although, from what I understand, he did still accept money. But he is forever banned. And this is what, baseball is forever against gambling, and it makes sense. But on that note, I do want to bring up that there is another baseball player, Pete Rose, who is the greatest hitter of all time. Now, he was caught gambling, but he did it as a coach. And he bet on his team, the Cincinnati Reds, to win. But he is also forever banned in baseball. And this, I believe, is one of the greatest travesties in baseball. He was my favorite player that I can remember as a kid. Of course, he was in the twilight as I remember, but the man is a legend, and he did this as a coach. Now, I would be okay with him forever banned in baseball as a coach, not going into the Hall of Fame as a coach. I'm fine, but baseball cannot pretend that the greatest hitter of all time never played the game. To ban him from the Hall of Fame is stupid. And as a coach, he bet on his team to win, which means he wasn't throwing games. But again, he did not do this as a player. He should not be banned from the Hall of Fame. And baseball should do the right thing and put this man in the Hall of Fame before he dies. The fact that he's not in the Hall of Fame, but makes me not even respect the Baseball Hall of Fame. But it's not the Hall of Good Merit. I mean, you have Ty Cobb in there. If you're wondering some of the stuff that he's done, just look him up. And there's plenty of other players out there in the Hall of Fame. So Pete Rose is not perfect by any means, but the man deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, and he deserves to do it before he dies. And baseball makes no sense. I mean, they let him in the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame, which I'm glad they did that. But the biggest thing is they also brought him back for a ceremony of the greatest team of all time, and of course Pete Rose was allowed to come back for one day. So when it suited baseball for one day because it made them money, Pete Rose was allowed to attend and be a part of that, but he's not in the Hall of Fame. So go figure. Baseball fixed that. I'm a huge fan of baseball. I'm going to tell you a couple quick stories. Now, my mom is, my mom was, now she died when I was about 11 or 12, but she was a huge Red Sox fan. My dad was a big Cincinnati Reds fan. They were actually at the World Series. Cincinnati Reds, of course, part of that big red machine that Pete Rose was part of. And she was in Cincinnati. My dad, the big Reds fan, she had the big, go Red Sox in Cincinnati. So the fact that they were a part of that, which is why I'm a huge Red Sox fan, and Cincinnati Reds is my second favorite team. Interesting baseball fact. Did you know that the 1869 Cincinnati Red Sox went 57-0 and are the only Major League Baseball team to ever go undefeated? Now, 57-0 compared to what they play today is 162 games, but not as much. But I don't think any team is going to go on a 57-0 run. So that is a remarkable record, and the fact that it still stands today, that no other team has gone undefeated, or even, I don't even believe there's a team that came close to that run. But I digress. So in the beginning, we're learning about Ray Kinsala's father, how he was, they don't have a great history. His hero was Shoeless Joe Jackson, and one of the things he mentioned is that he became a Brooklyn Dodgers fan because that was, something that him and his dad can go back and forth on. He got to fight him on it. But we're going to come back to that. And so we see this, Ray and his family, his wife and his daughter, and they buy this farm, this great beginning. They're building corn, and then he's out in the field and he hears, "If you build it, he will come." And he tells his wife, she doesn't hear it, and he's going out to town. He's asking like if they possibly hear it, and they think he's crazy. His wife thinks he's kind of crazy, but eventually he sees like a vision of a baseball field and Shoeless Joe Jackson, played by Ray Liotta. Now Ray Liotta doesn't have a huge role in this, but he has a very pivotal and important role in this, and he played it perfectly. Now then he builds this baseball field. Eventually, Shoeless Joe Jackson comes. He invites other players, and which is because I mentioned there was 8 of us, and this was the 1918 team. They come and they're just playing around. But before that, he got to have batting practice with Shoeless Joe Jackson, and then he hears another voice, "Ease his pain." Now, something to know is that because of this decision that he did, he's having trouble paying his mortgage, and you got his wife's brother going behind his back trying to push him into selling it, because it just seems like, well, he says he doesn't want his sister to go homeless or whatever because of this whole thing, and because everyone thinks that he's crazy. And so they go to, it's I got some notes here because there's just so much going on, and I just absolutely love this. But so they're at this kind of town hall meeting, and they're talking about banning books of a Terrence Mann, and there's a town hall fight, and you got this one woman, and typical Karen, and it's kind of interesting because you got stuff going on today, and they're talking about civil rights and freedoms and liberties and some of the things that we value today that are kind of at risk, and things that the government is kind of taken away, and it just was kind of interesting because of some of the stuff we're going on today. But Terrence Mann was a brilliant writer in this, and of course that's played by James Earl Jones, who is also the voice of Darth Vader, which great time to be a Star Wars fan. But he is a brilliant actor. If you have not seen any of his movies, correct that. The man is amazing. But they're talking about banning his books, and that's when Ray Kinsala, who's played by Kevin Costner, another brilliant actor. If you haven't seen his movies, correct that. And he figures out Terrence Mann is who he believes is ease his pain. So he goes on this 1,500-mile voyage that his wife did not really support at the time, but they realized that they had they both had the same dream, that he was at Fenway Park, home of the best baseball team, Boston Red Sox, and they both had the same vision that they're with him. So he goes all the way 1,500 miles to meet him, and he is not very friendly, but eventually gets him to go to Fenway. And while he's at Fenway Park, the sign starts messing up, but he hears "Go the Distance," and he looks up, and it says Archibald Moonlight Graham, Chisholm, Minnesota, New York Giants, 1922, lifetime statistics, 1 game, 0 at bats. And of course, Terrence Mann, he acts like he didn't see it, but eventually, after they leave the game, he admits that he sees it. So they go on this big journey to Minnesota to find Archibald, only to find out that he had died 16 years prior. But he ends up seeing, what's kind of interesting is that Ray Gonzalez, he goes outside after, talking with Terrence Mann, and he sees a movie theater sign that says, The Godfather. And of course, Ray Liotta was a big part of that movie. So I thought that was interesting that was shown there. But he sees the ghost, Moonlight, Moonlight Archibald, Moonlight, his ghost, and he starts talking to him. This is the older version, and he tells him that he has a way for him to, live his dream, which his dream was just to have that one chance at a bat, because he only played a half inning of defense, and just when he was about to bat, they said no, and it took him out. He was sent down, never got back into the majors again. So that was a big thing. But as the old man says no, and he of course became a doctor. Now they eventually come home, and Terrence Mann, of course, says he's going to come with them. But on the way, they pick up this young kid, and his name is Archie Graham. He's a baseball player. And if you didn't figure this out, this is the younger version of Archibald Moonlight Graham. Now he tells Mann that his Ray Kinsella tells Mann, as they're driving back to where he lives in Iowa, he tells him that he could never respect a man whose hero is a criminal. And of course, his father's hero was Shoeless Joe Jackson. Before I go back to this, I want to go back to a moment that he had with Shoeless, and he's Ray, not Ray, but Ray Kinsella. He said, "Is this heaven?" And Shoeless Joe Jackson says, Ray Kinsella says, "No, this is Iowa," which is a classic scene in there. But Ray, what we find out is that Ray's dad died before he could ever take back that moment, and this, of course, has been eaten away at Ray Kinsella, throughout his life, and and they're all Ray's there. They finally get back to the baseball stadium, back in Iowa, and they're talking to, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Ray Liotta. And my favorite Ray Liotta quote in this whole movie, and I wrote this down, he says, "You won't believe how many guys wanted to play here. We had to beat him off with a stick." And then he goes on to say that Ty Cobb wanted to play, but none of us could stand the son of a bitch while we were alive, so we told him to stick it. And of course he laughs. And that again goes back to what I said before about Ty Cobb. He was, look him up, look at some of the stuff that he was accused of and what he got in trouble for, and this man is in the Hall of Fame. So if we are going to judge by character, why is he in the Hall of Fame and Pete Rose isn't? It just doesn't make sense. It defies baseball logic. Put the man in the Hall of Fame. But I digress. Now, after that, they start playing the game, and Archie, Shoeless Joe Jackson says, get in. And they, of course, brought all these players who, from various reasons within baseball history, that, I believe they were banned or whatnot, but they're playing a game, but they needed Archie, and he goes in, he steps in, and he gets his at bat, which was so awesome. It was a major moment, and of course, he hits it out into outfield. Who he caught the player out there caught his ball, but he hits in an RBI, so he scored a run, and he had that moment that he never got. So that was a wonderful moment. But just as that, after that happens, Mark, who's the brother of his wife, comes and he comes across, just walks across, because remember, he cannot see these baseball players. And in the beginning, when he only his daughter and his wife could see them, and there was a moment where her parents were there and Mark, and they couldn't see him. They thought they were crazy, but so he's walking across the field, and he starts yelling at Ray, saying you gotta sell, you're gonna foreclose, you're gonna lose the house, this and that. He's really trying to get this all this land because he wants it, but he's like, and I'll let you live there for free and everything, but I want the land. So he's being really kind of shady, and it's all coming to this climax. He could lose the field, but right as that happens, he pitches an idea, or not him, but his daughter pitches an idea that well, actually, let me stop that. So Ray starts yelling, and he ends up pushing his daughter. Well, no, he's yelling. That comes a little bit later, but he's yelling, and his daughter pitches the idea that you don't have to sell the house, because people will come. They will want to see this baseball field, and we can sell tickets. And at this moment, we don't know what Terrence Mann's true role in all this is going to be, but I want you to watch this video. I kind of spliced it in, and this is one of James Earl Jones, who of course plays Terrence Mann. My favorite moment in this whole movie, what he talks about. Go ahead and watch. Actually, I'm just going to talk about it, but he goes in and talks about how people will come from miles and miles, and how beautiful it is, and they'll come and they won't know the reason. Just look up this video. I decided not to put it in because I want this to stay up on YouTube, and sometimes they're funny about splicing in different parts of movies. So I don't want to do. I'm not going to put it in for this time, but go look up just look up that scene. It's absolutely brilliant. But eventually, Mark, he comes after that wonderful scene. He starts yelling. He ends up knocking the daughter Karen off these baseball bleacher seats that he had put in there so they can watch the game. And it looks like she had died or really hurt herself, but she was choking on a hot dog that she was eating there. And then at this moment, this scene was absolutely beautiful. You see Archie, so they have these gravel, whatever, at the edge of the baseball field. And if you go back earlier, Ray invited Shoeless Joe Jackson to come in the house, but he saw those rocks, and he did not pass it. We don't know what that meant at this point, but Archie, you see him cross over, and as he does, he turns back into the old man that Ray spoke to when he was a doctor. When he spoke to his ghost, and he turns back to that, and of course he was a doctor, and he comes in and saves the daughter. And it's at that moment we realize that if they cross that, they can never go back to that. And Ray, of course, is sad about this, and he says, I'm sorry. He says, no, it's okay, I fulfilled my dream. And then he goes back, and just an absolutely beautiful scene. So then Shoeless Joe Jackson invites Terrence Mann to go into the cornfield with him, and he wants to show him stuff. And of course, Ray Kinsella is upset. He's like, what do I get out of this? And just an amazing scene. And, Joe Jackson saying, did you do this just for you? Just to see what you can get out of it? And then he makes him realize no. But so Terrence Mann, basically, this is where you find out his calling. And he was invited in there because he had an interview about Ebbets Field back then. And basically what he's going to do is add in the bits and pieces about this baseball stadium. And this goes back to that scene that I told you guys to look up. And because he writes about Shoeless Joe Jackson, the players, and how cars will come for miles and not really know why they're there, but they end up coming because he wrote about this. And at the end of this scene, we're going to come back to that. But right as he goes into the field, you see, he disappears into the field. He starts kind of getting invisible like they all did. And at that moment, we find out that if you build it, he will come. Had nothing to do about Shoeless Joe Jackson, but it was about his father. His father had come, and he introduced him to his daughter and his wife, and they end up playing catch. He calls him Dad. Wonderful moment. And then it just kind of fades away, and you see, like, into the distance all these cars coming in, just like Terrence Mann had said, just like his daughter had said, and that's how it ends. But go watch this movie. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. If you've seen it before, watch it again. This movie was absolutely fantastic. Ray Liotta did a good job, an amazing job in this. Absolutely brilliant cast and brilliant writing. But yeah, if you love baseball, if you love great movies, if you're a fan of Ray Liotta, if you're a fan of Kevin Costner, James Earl Jones, if you just love good movies, go watch this movie. I promise you're going to love it. And what's cool is that there actually is a place, the Field of Dreams. You can go visit this. You can go watch games. It's actually free admission. They do accept donations to help the field keep going. I believe MLB plays a game there, and I think you can even stay over. But I'm going to put the link to that in my description, because if you're interested in that, you can go check it out. But yeah, I want to know if you watch this movie. If you haven't, let me know that you're going to watch it. What was your favorite part? Did you enjoy this review? Rest in peace to Ray Liotta. But yeah, what do you guys think? I love you guys. I'll see you at my next one.